Hi, Bells fans. Ryan Carlson here. I'm here with Bells pitching coach and recruiting coordinator, Jim Clem. You know him well. Coach, thanks for joining me. And how has your New Year's been?
My pleasure, Ryan. It's been good. I know that everybody's dealing with COVID, and we are too, but things are moving along fine. And no, we're, fortunately, I can say that my family and I are doing just fine. Thanks for asking. Yeah.
Of course. Happy to hear that. Happy to hear that. The Bells have been announcing their roster through press releases over the course of the fall and into the spring. So Bells fans, I'm sure you've been keeping your eye on that. And we're talking to the man who's behind it all, Coach Clem. And Coach, how do you put the rosters together, whether it be with your coaching staff? When does it start? When do you start to put it together? And then what goes into all that?
Sure. Well, it started, I began 11 years ago now putting together rosters, and I was just kind of assigned that task. I was willing to do it, and it's a collaboration, honestly. But there's it's nice when there's a point person where all the information funnels to, and then I can get it out to the people who are helping put the roster together along with myself, and then we really do collaborate on it. And those people, of course, are the head coach, the assistant coaches, our general manager, and our owner. Those people all have input and have, through the years, some have, had a bigger role than others. And there's been times when I've done most of it by myself, honestly. It just depends on the year and who the coaches are and where we're at that moment in time. But generally, I have I get a lot of help. Most of the head coaches. This will be in my 11th year. Adam Giesland, is the 6th head coach that I've been with. So they all have a different maybe how much they want to be involved with it. This roster, Adam has been involved every step of the way. He knows every player that's on here and has been very active in being a part of it, which I've really appreciated. Stephanie Morale, our general manager, she gets a lot of information sent her way, which she shares with us. And we bounce ideas off of Stephanie, and she bounces them off us. So she's included, and at times, especially with certain players that we're talking about. And then our owner, Glenn Kirkpatrick, is a very good baseball guy, and he has some players that he's comes across in his travels, and so he sometimes gives us some ideas. And so we're really a team-oriented thing when it comes to putting together the roster. But I have been the person through the 11 years that's been the one common denominator, I guess you could say, and I'm happy to help with it. I think you get to know the players a little bit before they even get here, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, and there's a myriad of different schools represented on the Bells roster. It seems like each summer there's some new schools added even. And so where does that network of connections kind of stem from, and what connections have you made during your time with the Bells?
Okay, yeah, great. When I first started this, I used the connections that I had because of the coaching that I'd done. I mean, even some of my connections go back as far as my playing days, guys who are older and still in the game and who have a lot of knowledge that they could share with me about players, and also coaches and programs that we should get connected with. So some of my old teammates and some of my old coaches to begin with, that's where it started. And then, it kind of grew from there. A lot of the people I got to know from my high school coaching days, and we had a lot of players that I was very fortunate to coach a lot of players who went on to play college baseball, a number of players who were drafted and played professionally. And so through that, I got to know a lot of college coaches, and I got to know a lot of scouts. And so my baseball network was really pretty big before I started coaching with the Bells. And so, I kind of leaned on that to get started with. But then every coach that has been part of the Bells in the last 11 years has had their own contacts And so we've encouraged them to reach out to people when we thought there were players there that we would really like to have. So everybody brings something to the table, and I love that part. I love the team part of the coaching staff that brings ideas to the table. I think that's, if one person only was doing it, you just have the one perspective. You'd probably miss on some guys, and you can't take everybody, but you want to take the best players you can find who are also going to be a good fit with the Bells. So that's kind of how it got started. I had a bunch of contacts. I also was willing to put the time in, and now it's branched off and gotten bigger. A lot of credit goes to the head coaches. They've been a big help in this process through the years, and we've had some great head coaches, but we've had a lot of assistants who have been big in that. And frankly, there were times when we didn't have a head coach in place and the roster had to get done. And then it was, Nick Caples originally, and then Stephanie Morale since 2014, who were huge help when I was having to kind of navigate those waters by myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned now that everybody kind of gives their input on these players, and it's a mutual effort. What are some of the specific parameters and specific talent, skills, or things you hear from the head coaches that you and your staff look for players?
That's a great question. Well, we kind of have a set of questions that we try to touch on. It all comes down to really what our needs are at the time. And when we're just beginning the roster, well, then it's wide open. Our needs are wide and varied, and lots of players we need. And so we look at the talent piece as a part of the questions. We try to find out what tools they have, what skills they have, what their development is at the time. And then, we try to find out, what kind of person are they? What kind of character do they exhibit? And then we build a profile on the player as to what, they can do, and then and how they're going to represent the Bells. And we take that information. We gather information on a lot of different players, and then we kind of sift through it. There are certain programs that we've done a lot of business with through the years, and they're people that we've just gained a lot of trust with. We know what we're getting. They know what they're getting, and so the experience that they get here is something that they value because it's going to help develop their players. So there are certain programs that we typically have go to year in and year out. Doesn't mean we're always going to take players from them, but we're definitely going to have conversations with them. And then we always try to branch into some new programs, some that we've had a lot of respect for. Maybe we just didn't have the right opening at the time to a player that fit from their roster. You think about it, Ryan, and you get, the roster size typically around 30 players, and all the players in the country who want to play summer baseball. It's a lot to sort through to try to get the right guys in your locker room that are going to come and play hard and play well and have fun together doing it. That's really what we're trying to do, is put a roster together that's going to, hopefully compete well, but still give us a chance to have fun along the way. So it's not all fun and games like it might come off as if you are. It's a lot of work, and you got to have players who want to put in the work and are with an attitude that's like, I love being here, right? I love being here, not just, no, this is something I got to do. That you want them to want to be there too.
Definitely. Yeah. And I want to touch on that in a little bit, but I also want to look back kind of, if you were to start from scratch, you and the coaching staff, with all the programs and the colleges and all the players just around the entire nation, how do you narrow down which schools to target? And you touched on connections, and even find those diamond in the roughs, maybe at a community college level.
Okay. Um, we that's a really great question. We through the years, Eddie Poplawski was the owner when we first started, and then Glenn Kirkpatrick came along, and when Glenn came along, he pretty much Glenn, uh, Glenn Kirkpatrick is a really good guy, and as was Eddie Poplawski. So the owners set kind of a tone for expectation of excellence, both of them, and the and so when we go out to colleges, we start with some reputable colleges, people who are known for doing a good job, whose expectations are high for their players. You want that in your program, because those core values that are instilled in their programs, they carry over into life and into the summer, and so they bring with them some core values that are you're not starting from scratch. They've already got a lot of that in them. And so that's really how we kind of started it, looking for programs like that, coaches like that, who are good, hardworking, trustworthy guys that not only knew baseball, but valued the character piece as well. So we go after those programs. There's lots of guys doing great jobs, and their programs are reputable, and you could have so many people I could rattle off for names that are just wonderful programs. But that's what you start. That's where we kind of started when we first got the Bells. The first roster we had was actually pretty much done for us. By the time the team was bought and the new coaching staff was in place, the prior GM had filled the roster pretty much. So it wasn't till the second year that we went out and made our own roster, and that's how we went about it. We identified programs that we thought we'd like to have part of our program, and then we went to work and established relationships, and went out and saw them, met the coaches, whether going to their college or going to the ABCA conference where they would be, hopefully, when you could meet them there, obviously talking to them on the phone, and just getting to know each other. That takes some time. Those guys, they're lending you their players. They need to know that their players are going to be taken care of in a way that fits what they're hoping will happen, what their program needs. So we've found those programs, and we're always adding to it. And so you got it right. There are certain programs that we have on our roster almost represented every year, and then there's another set of players that we bring in from other schools who we want to expand our horizons, so to speak, and broaden our base for players. Yeah. So that's kind of how we did it to start with, just looking for guys who we thought did a great job.
Yeah, and there's a ton of schools represented on the roster for 2021. Schools like UCLA, and also local schools such as Edmonds and other community colleges in the area, which I know head coach Adam Giesland coaches at Edmonds, and you and Giesland have a little bit of a local pull as well each summer, it seems.
Yeah, you got to have that, because those players they live close, and they're handier to get up to Bellingham. They can come on a moment's notice. That's important to have that. We try to get a mix in our locker room. We don't want all big school guys. We think that a mix is a real healthy thing. And so we try to get, obviously half our roster is going to be Division I guys. And then we, maybe a lot more than that depending on the year. But we always make sure that we have Division II, Division III, community college, that they're represented on our roster as well. I mean, that's part of the plan. There are good players at every level. And so if you can get the best players from the D2, D3 community college, they're every bit as good as the Division I guys. They just chose a different path, or they weren't, they just didn't get the same opportunity early on, or they developed late. And there's lots of reasons why guys go to smaller schools. But they're good players. And oftentimes the small school guys have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They have something to prove, which is a fun thing to have in your locker room too. It's a great dynamic. We've learned it's also important to have young players and experienced players on your roster, so it's not all one way or the other. That blend of experience and youth, I think, also brings out the best in the players. Nobody can, you get just a more personality in your team when you have all of that represented. It's the experience of 3-year college guy. He's been through the summer grind. He knows what it is. He's not surprised by how much work it is. And the young guys can see those guys leading the way, and then they just kind of fall in line. I guess this is how you do it, right? They're not used to playing every day. College teams play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe a midweek game. But summer baseball is sometimes, at least 6 games in a row, and sometimes 9 or 12 before you get a day off. Yep. Way different demand of your time and physical, the wear and tear of just everyday exercising, and the sleep schedule, everything about it. It's tiring. So you got to learn how to manage that. When to sleep and how much sleep to get. There's a whole lot. The guys learn so much. If they haven't done it before, they learn a lot. The older guys, they already know a lot of that, and yep, they're a big help to the younger guys.
I bet. Yeah. And of course, there'll be a whole new variable this season of how COVID will play into it, but that's more of a we'll wait and see kind of thing. I also wanted to touch on, the players in specific. You have these connections and network of schools and programs, but when it really comes down to what players they're sending, is that more of you and your staff saying, hey, we would like maybe these guys, or is that them saying, we would love to send these guys to you?
It's both, actually. Certain schools, like you talked about on our roster, I mean, if you go through the years, you're going to see, UCLA and Stanford and Arizona State and the University of Washington, Cal. You're going to see those schools on our roster almost every year. But past that, there are other guys who are on our roster at least every other year. And sometimes, the smaller schools, certain schools, they're represented quite often too. The college coaches oftentimes they'll initiate the conversation. They'll call us and they'll try to find out, what your needs are. Hey, what do you need? And so we'll tell them what we're looking for, and then they tell us what they've got, and then we just bring it back and talk about it as a whoever's putting the roster together, and then we get back to them and say yes on this player, or no, that one doesn't quite fit for us. So they'll call us with some ideas, and then we call them too with if we feel like we haven't heard from them yet. The roster it's an interesting thing. It's always moving. A lot of college coaches, they want to get it done right away. I mean, before they even have a fall practice, they want to have it off their desk and be done with it. And other guys want to wait till the end of fall ball, where they've seen their guys and they know them, better, and then decide where they want to send them. So it just depends, right? So that's anywhere from August that guys are calling you, all the way through November. Typically, it's getting earlier and earlier because the guys who used to wait till November to do it are finding out that they're left holding the bag. There's a lot of teams that have filled their rosters by November, and so they don't usually wait that long anymore. But they might wait till they've had a month of fall ball before they get going on it, instead of waiting till the end of it. But those are schools. I'd say, Ryan, the whole thing comes down to communicating what your needs are, and them telling us basically what we have for you, and then we just sit down and sort through it. A lot of the coaches will send us video. They'll give us personal information because they think that's something we want to know. And the personal stuff isn't really that's not a determining factor, as much, unless they're having a lot of problems. That's the only thing that would keep a kid from getting on our roster, is if he's just having trouble staying in school, or just having trouble staying out of trouble. That's kind of what we try to gain from that. But as far as personalities and those kinds of things, we're not that. That's not as big a deal to us. We believe that everybody is likable, and so you just get them here as long as they have high character. There's the like piece is just, that's easy. We like all our players. That's an easy thing. We love them all, and they're all coming in being respected. And now, but we can't have 10 first basemen and no shortstops, right? And so
Right.
there's a balance there. You got to really recruit according to your needs, and so that's the tricky part. You turn down a lot of good players because you don't have a space for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a very small fraction of the roster, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but and when I say small, maybe 2 or 3 players total each summer who are graduating from high school the spring right before summer. So they're making the jump from high school ball and now play into this with these collegiate guys, some of whom are D1 and have been around, the college level for a while. So how do you find those players?
We have some friends who are scouts, who give us a lot of information that way. But typically, the league has a limit on the number of high school players you can have. It's six high school guys is the max number you can have on your roster, and so, which is good because it's not meant to be a high school league. It's meant to be a collegiate league. And so the typical high school guy's not ready for this league. It's too big a jump. But there are players, and we all know, that are ready. But those guys are usually, they also have the draft that they're considering. They're that good. And so for us to take a high school guy, we've typically had a couple of high school players on our teams, but never really any more than that. This is a really unusual year for us. We have taken more high school guys on this roster than we've ever taken, but we also have these players are all draftable guys, and so they're high talent, high character, really, really good players. So they'll fit in just fine. There'll be a learning curve because there always is, but they're ready for this. They're going to go to their colleges and immediately be impacts at their colleges as well. So this is a good first step for them, which is why their college coaches want them playing this summer instead of playing, in an 18U league someplace where most high school guys would be. They want to get these guys out in a college league, so they've got, a day in and day out college facing college pitching and college hitters. So yeah, it's unusual, but we do have them, and our high school guys are really talented. They'll be fun for our fans to watch play. Definite prospects, along with a lot of our college guys who are also prospects, who chose to go to college first. And we think these high school guys will, we're hoping that, whatever's supposed to happen, we'll root for them. But, would be interesting to see how many of them come to Bellingham. And if they were a number one draft pick, first round, second round draft pick, they're going to have some hard decisions to make. So we'll see what it brings. But, you don't want to turn down a good player just because he might. Matt McLean was a good example of a highly touted high school player who was a first round draft choice by Arizona and chose to go to UCLA and play baseball in Bellingham instead of signing out of high school. So, just because a player gets drafted in the first, second, or third round, it doesn't mean that they're not going to go to college. And so we would hate to turn down a player who's offered to us who has, that kind of talent, just for fear that he might sign professionally. If he does that, I mean, we're going to root for him all the way. And those are personal decisions that we all accept.
Yeah.
It's just part of the deal. But those are fun, exciting players to have. And we've got several of them on this roster now, which is not typical. We have shied away from high school players through the years because typically they weren't ready. But these high profile guys, it's a little different. They're ready, and the learning curve is still there. So there'll be some of that, but they'll catch up to the speed of the game shortly.
Yeah, and like you said, there are a lot of big names coming to Bellingham this summer, and like you said, they're going to be very exciting to watch. So Bells fans are not going to want to miss it. Coach, how do you and your coaching staff establish the credibility for these programs to say, okay, yeah, we want to send them to Bellingham? Obviously, you guys have a well-respected, well-known program and have built that over the years. How have you and your coaching staff been able to build that credibility?
I think a lot of it is the conversations you have with those people, and you just get to know each other, and you can ask the hard questions, and you're going to get an honest answer. I think that's where a lot of it comes from, but it's validated by the players that they've had sent you before who come back to their programs. One is hopefully better players and better, just more mature individuals, and they become ambassadors for your team. They'll go back and they'll say, wow, I learned a lot playing for the Bells, or that was such a wonderful experience in Bellingham, from the front office to the coaches, to the fans, to the host families. They just can't say enough good things about their experience. That goes a long ways with coaches. So typically the players sell our program for us. We often don't have to say much. They are already know. And so if it's a new school that we haven't had players on before, then we might have to explain to them a little, kind of what our philosophies are and what we're going to do. But most coaches, they know who has, who does it right and who's still, kind of working on that. And so, they're the circles, the baseball circles are pretty tight. And if you want to know something, you always know somebody, and you don't know, you can always call one of your friends in baseball and they're going to have an opinion on it. So fortunately for the Bells, I think people generally say what a great place. You know, if you can get your players on the Bells team, that's a wonderful place for them to go.
Definitely. How does this roster this upcoming summer 2021 compare to others that you've seen and that you've helped build before? How is it different? And what can the Bells fans look forward to?
Okay, sure. One of the things that makes this roster, I think, kind of stand out is um, we've got really it's as it's turned out, we've got a really good mix of big and small school players, and so that's one of the things that jumps out. We have a really good mix of some really young, talented, good players, but we've also got some so-called veterans at the college game coming in, and so that mix is there. We're not heavy on youth or heavy on experience. It's just it looks like a really good blended schedule roster. We feel like the talent is equal between pitching and position players, that we're not going to have to be carried by our pitching, or we're not going to have to be carried by our position players, our offense. But we really think that we're going to have both sides of the game covered. We expect that we've got good offensive, good defensive players, and we like our pitching staff. So one of the things that happens with these rosters, you've got your full-time contract guys, and you've got 10-day players, and sometimes they don't in Bellingham, but I think sometimes 10-day players it's not really known how important they are to your team.
Hmm.
I think in general, fans may not appreciate, they just don't know that even if they are a 10-day player. I mean, how would you know that? But are your temporary players, they are really important to your roster, because you're going to, like our roster, for example, at the beginning of the season, we'll have 15 players who are part-time players, and you're playing 2 weeks to a month with those guys before your full-time players even roll into town. So your 10-day guys set the tone. You win and lose seasons oftentimes with how good your 10-day players are. And so you really got to be able to find temporary players who are good enough to be full-time players, but just weren't quite given the opportunity because they didn't have the body of work yet to prove that. And so that's usually why they are a 10-day player rather than a full-time contract person, is they just haven't had the body of work yet that kind of proves that they should be a full-time guy. But a 10-day player, it gives them an opportunity to prove that they are. And some of them will hook on. There's stuff happens with the roster. Sometimes players, they don't show up. Stuff happens. And if they do get drafted and decide to sign, or if they end up having to go to summer school for some reason, they were injured. Stuff happens. And so you're going to lose players. You don't know who it's going to be. You don't know when it's going to be. But you need good 10-day players to fall back on to fill a hole that could happen overnight. So we are really excited about our roster, including our 10-day players. We think our 10-day players are going to really help us. We don't treat a 10-day player any differently than we do a full-time guy. I mean, you walk into our locker room and you wouldn't know the difference unless you were the player who, signed the contract.
Mm-hmm.
We treat them all the same. There really isn't, any way you'd know the difference. But the players who are 10-day guys are exciting players to have too, because they've got something to prove as well. And so it's I really Adam Giesland Really this year, the roster, because our other two assistants joined us late after the roster was put together, it really came down to Glenn Kirkpatrick and Stephanie Morale and Adam and I, as far as, kind of who made suggestions and passed information along to us. And then in the end, it was Adam and I who, would decide on these players. But it's an exciting roster. I mean, I'm not gonna hold back on that. I mean, we feel really good about it.
Yeah.
And how it plays out day one, who shows up, and we don't know, but it's a fun roster to look at on paper. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, I want to go back to those 10-day guys too.
Mm-hmm.
Are those all kind of front of the season beginning, see who will fit in for the remainder of the year? Are these contracts spread out? Do they come and go? And how are those contracts kind of arranged beforehand?
Oh, great question. Typically they're at the front end because right away we're going to be without some players. Our quarter school guys, they, especially from the Division I programs, they go till the middle of June, just before they're even done with their classes. And then if their school happens to qualify for the postseason, the Division I postseason goes to July if you stay in, in the winning rounds of the tournament. So those players, the quarter school guys, they're the ones who usually come in late. The semester school guys, they're there on time, unless their season, is extended because of postseason play, which happens. So you just don't know who those players are going to be. But we always have players who we know are going to be late because they're quarter school. So we have to plan for their absence and get 10-day players to take their place till we know they're going to be done with school. And then the guys that make the playoffs, with some of the schools we have represented on our roster, they're going to be in the playoffs. They may not all make it, but some of them for sure are going to make the playoffs. So we just kind of make our best guess at that, and make sure that we have enough pitchers to cover a staff of 15 until we get our guys in, and then enough position players to make sure that we have an extra infielder, an extra outfielder, and an extra catcher. Provide, and then if we need more than that, once the season kind of progresses, we'll kind of see where things are headed. We may add to that in the spring. So those players are definitely up front. That's when you need the 10-day guys, but you might need them at the end too. Guys get tired, hurt, but there are some you can actually plan for because our season goes so long that semester schools, there might be a handful of players that have to go back to start classes before your season's even over. So you hope that's not many, but it always seems like there's a couple who end up having to go because, our season goes till like August. I'm not even sure the actual date, but it's probably August 17th to August 20th if you were to play in the final game of the season.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, probably August 17th is kind of what I think. And there are some schools that start right at that time. So that's it. You need them at the beginning, you need them maybe at the end. And in between that really depends on, if they all stay healthy. If you've got some guys go down with injuries, then you're going to need them then too. So some 10-day players will start with you. They'll leave for a while. They'll get called back.
Okay. So they do come to Bellingham and then sometimes go back.
Yes.
Okay.
And then not all of them. Some of them will go join another league.
Okay.
And so they may not be able to come back because they haven't made another commitment. But this is a league that players want to get into, a high-ranking collegiate league in the country, one of the highest. And so players want to get in that. It's good for their resume and it's good experience for them. So typically we don't, players, there's a lot of players, but as you get going through the season, the pool gets smaller because, if they didn't hook on with a team, they're going to go play somewhere else where they can play. So finding players at the end can be difficult. There isn't an actual number of days that a 10-day contract is obligated to, but it's just the term given to a temporary player. So the 10-day contract really could be anything from 1 day to, a whole season. Typically I'd say it's a good 2 weeks that they're with you. It could turn into a month, but that would be, and then they'd be released because all your players would have reported by then. So it really depends on who they're there for. If it's a position player and they're that position guy rolls in, then the 10-day player is released. The pitchers, it's a little different because we expect a number of our pitchers won't be there on time, and so most of those guys will last a couple of weeks, and then it depends on what's happening with their teams after that. But whoever the place they've taken of, they'll stay with us until they've reported to our team.
Well, it sounds like there is quite a roster to look forward to watching play this summer for all the Bells fans. Coach, how have you seen the league as a whole change over these 10 years that you've been there?
The league has I guess the way I'd sum it up is the league has really grown. It's grown in so many ways. There's better venues, they're better run. It's just more professional along, all the way through. The way these teams are being run, the owners to the GMs to the coaching staffs, it's just gotten better and better. The caliber of the players is higher. It's just continued to grow in a positive way. And then on top of that, the number of teams in the league has grown. There's 15 teams in the league now. That's a lot more than there were when we started. I honestly can't remember what the number was when we started, but it certainly was. It was probably 8, 9, something like that. Maybe 10. I'd have to go back and check. But to have 15 teams now, it shows you it's how well it's developed.
Without a season in 2020, the West Coast League did add 3 teams up in Canada, in Edmonton and Kamloops and Nanaimo, which will be exciting for all the other teams who were there before. I'm sure they're looking forward to traveling there. And Coach, hopefully this summer, the plan is to return to Joe Martin Field for some Bells baseball. What are you looking forward to the most? Is it seeing everybody again, working there again? We don't know how it's going to work with COVID, but as of now, what are you most looking forward to?
Just getting back on the field with the coaches and the players and seeing our front office people who we really love. I mean, they're part of our team, and we miss them. We talk on the phone and occasionally Zoom, but it's not the same as being there with them. And we're all in this together. You're part of that, and everybody who works for the Bells, I hope, feels that. Whether they're in concessions or taking tickets, or they're, having another role that you don't even see. Maybe they're in the front office and they're not visible to the public. But it's just, we all know each other. We're all trying to pull together. It's a wonderful team approach to running a business that we all feel really welcome and appreciated. And you love working in an environment like that. I could, I think we could all be working other places, right? But we love working for the Bells. It's not just the baseball piece; it's the people you're working with too.
I know you're excited to get back. Are there any concessions that you've tried at Joe Martin Field or anything in the surrounding area that you're most looking forward to?
Yeah, I love the smells of the ballpark when you walk into a game. Yeah, you walk by the barbecue pit, man, that makes it almost stops you in your tracks. And you want to grab a Polish and a soda and chat with the fans, but I don't. But it grabs you every time you walk by.
I bet.
And there's just the vibe of the park. I know that we're not sure quite what we're looking at for fans, the number of fans that can come, but the energy at the ballpark is a really fun thing. And our players, I know, feed off of that. But whatever we can do, just getting on the field will feel good again. And we know that our fans will follow us even if they can't be in the ballpark at the time. But we're hopeful that by then, people will be able to come.
We sure are. By then you'd like to think that there would be some fans allowed back in full capacity. I'm not sure. I
Right.
guess we won't know until summer, but there'll be multiple ways that Bells fans can watch and listen to the Bells all summer long and hopefully try to get to see them in person a couple times over the course of the summer. It should be great. Coach, thank you so much for joining me today on this vodcast, and great checking in with you again. And I know the Bells fans, I'm sure, enjoyed learning from you and are excited to see you back at the park as well.
Thank you. In closing, we hope that the borders open, not just to see the new teams, but we want to see our owner too. So, Glenn
That's right.
is a big part of that. So to have, I'm hoping that the border finds a way to get open by then, and can't wait to work with the players and get back to what we all love to do, which is being around the game of baseball.
100%. We are in a wait and see time period, but of course, as I've said, the plan is to return to Joe Martin with a West Coast League season. So it should be fun. Coach, thank you so much again. Great to check in with you and chat with you. And Bells fans, keep your eye out for more press releases, roster updates, and multimedia on the Bells social media outlets. There's a lot coming this spring to look forward to before first pitch in June. Should be fun. Coach, once again, thank you. So good to see you. And Bells fans, we will see you on the next Bells Vodcast very soon. Go Bells.
Go Bells.